We are now going to move into the set of 18 items for which we are requesting from HaKadosh Baruch Hu some degree of protection. Before moving on, I should note that there are two versions to the Yehi Ratzon, one in which there are 18 items listed. A second version contains a mere 10 items. We shall be looking at the two versions further on in this panel. The first two of the 18 items is a request for protection from the Azei Panim and the Azut Panim. The difference between the two: Azei Panim is a character trait that applies to others, whereas the Azut Panim is the character trait within one's self, the person making the Yehi Ratzon request. Once again, comparing the four translations to the Siddur, insolence used by the Chabad Siddur for the Azei Panim is one who displays rude and disrespectful behavior. The RCA Siddur for Azei Panim describes these individuals as brazen men. Brazenness is one who is unrestrained by any sense of shame. I'll do it because I can, irrespective of any negative consequences to others. Koren and the monk prefer arrogance. Arrogance is one who demonstrates, reveals an exaggerated sense of one's own importance or abilities. The arrogant is the translation suggested by the Koren. For Azei Panim, arrogant men is the translation offered by the monk Siddur. The common thread for all three translations is an attitude of narcissism. Azut Panim, as noted, is a character trait that applies to the individual, him or herself. Impudence suggests the Chabad, brazenness the RCA, arrogance itself the Koren and the monk. And to quote Tolstoy on the matter of arrogance, an arrogant person considers him or herself perfect. This is the chief harm of arrogance. It interferes with a person's main task in life, namely becoming a better person. The next series of items in this tefillah relates to the topic of Ra, bad, evil. We have an Adam Ra, a Chaver Ra, a Shachen Ra, a Pega Ra, an Ayin Hara, and a Lashon Hara. Nowadays, because of political correctness, one tends not to call out the first three, the Adam, the Chaver, and the Shachen. The fourth, Pegara, relates to circumstances beyond the control of an individual. The last two have entered into the language of present-day Judaism and secular Jewishness. You have the Ayin Hara and the Lashon Hara. We shall take each of the 5 items separately. Firstly, the request that God should protect us from an Adam Ra. A wicked person, suggests Chabad. An evil person, the RCA. Koren and monk, once again, share the translation of simply a bad person. The definition of wicked, evil, bad is relative to the individual offering this tefillah of Yehi Ratzon. The next in the set is the Chaver Ra. Chaver is understood as a companion or a friend. So here RCA and Chabad suggest that the request is to protection from an evil companion. Koren, a bad friend. Monk, a bad companion. I guess the common thread with all 4 translations for Chaver Ra is the issue of deceit, where one at some point in time had trusted the individual who, on the basis of this trust, creates a negative situation. A shachen is a neighbor, not necessarily a chaver. And here once again, the Chabad and the RCA translate the shachen ra as an evil neighbor, Koren and monk, a bad neighbor. However, one defines the term evil and bad for this neighbor. While the term Adam, Chaver, and Shachen have a precise translation, the request for protection from the Pega Ra is far more fluid. Pei Gimel Ayin as a verb suggests the action of meeting somebody, coming across somebody, an encounter, to fall upon a certain situation, all suggesting an unplanned event. Pei Gimel Ayin also translates as to pray, in other words, an encounter with God. Pega includes the translation of striking or touching. Striking as in the concept of a magefa, a plague. In this context, I would suggest that Pei Gimel Ayin, an encounter, would be the best fit. and hence 3 of the translations suggest an evil mishap or a bad mishap or any mishap. A mishap is an unlucky accident. Chabad, an evil occurrence. All 4 translations suggest something that involved unwanted consequences, so that this request is kind of a request that we be protected from unintended consequences and events. Which brings us to the Ayin Hara. And in the Frum world, the Ayin Hara is a real force. Chabad.org offers a one-line definition: the harmful negative energy that is created when one looks at something with envy or ill feeling. And the website goes on to provide an explanation as to how one person who is envious can cause misfortune to an otherwise innocent individual. Translation offered by the Chabad Siddur for Ayin Hara is an evil eye. The RCA, Koren and Monk offer no translation because in the Ashkenaz version of this Yehi Ratzon, the entire segment from Ayin Hara down to Satan HaMashchit and the final item Din Shel Gehinam has not been included into the Yehi Ratzon. It was noted in the previous panel that the source for this Yehi Ratzon is the private tefillah of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. That tefillah is recorded in Masechet Brachot, Daf Tet Zayin Amud Bet, and in the Yehi Ratzon of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi there are only 10 items that are listed, and hence Nusach Ashkenaz follows closely the tefillah of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. At some point in time, when the Nusach Sefarad was finalized, 8 extra items were included into the Yehi Ratzon. Nusach Ari generally follows the Nusach Sefarad on account of its Kabbalistic overtones. And finally, the last of the 5 items discussed in this panel, the Lashon Hara. Once again, there is no translation for the RCA, Koren and Monk. Chabad's translation is a request for protection against malicious gossiping, slander, vilification, and so forth. So our translation will read as follows: Yehi Ratzon Milfanecha, a request from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we be protected mi'azei panim u'mi'azut panim, from the arrogant individual and the characteristic of arrogance itself. We also request protection from the Adam Ra, a bad person, a Chaver Ra, a bad friend, a Shachen Ra, a bad neighbor, u'mipega Ra, a bad mishap. And finally, we request protection from the Ayin Hara, the evil eye, u'miloshon hara, and from the malicious tongue.